Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I, too, rise in support of this bill, the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, and I want to begin by thanking the Chairman and our staffs for the outstanding work that they've done putting together this bill. I think Mr. McKeon has more than risen to the level of the bipartisan tradition of our committee. He has upheld the tradition held by our predecessors that this committee should work together, Republicans and Democrats, that it should be an open and transparent process. I can say that I and my staff feel very, very good about the open process we've had. We have not agreed on everything. We do not agree on everything that is in the bill, but where there were disagreements, we had an open and honest dialogue. We had votes in the committee, and now we will have votes on the floor. And overall, I think the Chairman and the members of both parties and staffs have put together a very strong bill that will protect our national defense and meet the primary duty of this Congress, and that is to provide for the national defense and the national security of our country. So I thank the Chairman and his staff for that work, and I look forward to continuing to work with him throughout this process. I also want to note one of our members who was not able to be there during the course of our markup, as she usually is, but nonetheless contributed greatly to the process. We all miss Congresswoman Gabrielle Gifford's presence on the committee, but we worked very closely with her staff on issues and priorities that have been important to her during her time on the committee, and she and her staff are still doing an outstanding job for the committee in contributing to this process. So I thank them, and we all look forward to Gabby coming back to this body and continuing her work. In putting together this bill, there are 5 main areas of priorities that I think we should focus on. First and foremost, whenever we have troops out in the battlefield, as they are in Afghanistan and Iraq, and also spread out in a whole lot of other countries, priority number 1 has to be to make sure that we give them the support, the equipment and the means necessary to carry out the mission that we have given them. I believe that this bill prioritizes that, both within the base bill and within the overseas contingency operations funding, to make sure that our troops in Afghanistan and Iraq elsewhere have the equipment they need to carry out the mission that we have given them. Second, I believe that counterterrorism and the fight against al-Qaeda must continue to be a top priority of this committee, and I believe that we strongly support that once again. We all learned as a nation in the world with the killing of Osama bin Laden how effective our Special Operations Command and other elements of our counterterrorism policy can be, but we also need to be mindful that the job is not done. We need to continue to fund those priorities, and I do want to specifically commend the folks at the Special Operations Command. I had the great privilege of chairing the subcommittee that's had jurisdiction over the Special Operations Command for 3 years. They do a fantastic job for our nation. Certainly everybody saw that in the case of getting bin Laden, but they do it every day in many, many ways that many people do not know and do not recognize. So I thank them for their outstanding work. We also have a huge challenge with the budget. As the Chairman mentioned, finding efficiencies in the defense budget is going to be critical. As we have heard on this floor over and over again in many contexts, we have a massive deficit. We have a deficit that is over 33% of what we spend. The defense budget is 20% of the overall budget. You cannot take 20% of the overall budget off the table and effectively deal with a deficit of that size. We are going to have to look carefully at where we spend our money in defense, just like it everywhere else, to make sure that we're getting the most for our dollar. I believe we have done that effectively in this bill, but I also believe that going forward that task is going to get harder, not easier. We must find ways to save money and spend it more efficiently within the Department of Defense. I also believe that our policy in Afghanistan is going to be critical. As I mentioned, we certainly fund our troops in the effort that they are performing right now in Afghanistan, but going forward we are going to really need to begin to bring those troops home to complete that mission. We will have some amendments that address that issue during the course of this bill. I look forward to that debate because I think this Congress needs to play a strong role in concluding our mission successfully in Afghanistan. And lastly, the issue that the Chairman mentioned that I think is very important in this bill is detainee policy and the AUMF. The Chairman very early on identified this as a clear priority, and I think he's absolutely right that Congress's voice should be heard on these very, very important issues. And we've worked closely on that, have reached some agreement. We have some areas of disagreement. The biggest one, we're going to have an amendment on this, is the idea of whether or not Article 3 courts should continue to be available for Guantanamo Bay detainees and those who would be captured in other situations in the future. I believe that it should. We shouldn't always have them in Article 3 courts. Military commissions have their place. Indefinite detention of enemy combatants has its place. But Article 3 courts have effectively served this country for over 200 years. We have tried and convicted over 400 terrorists in Article III federal courts. Right now in the United States of America, we have over 300 of them safely locked up. We can do it. It's an option we should not take away from the President. So, again, I want to thank the Chairman for a very open process. Bipartisanship is the tradition of this committee. He has upheld that very well, and I look forward to working with him as we go forward in this process, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from California.